So I wanted to kick off with a match that has been on everyone's minds this year because it was the first match that was obviously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and that was a match that really kick-started the Attitude Era. March 23rd, 1997, Bret Hitman Hart in one corner, Stone Cold Steve Austin in the other, and you right in the middle as the special guest referee on that night in WrestleMania 13. That match wouldn't have been the same without you being a part of it, and especially that double turn at the end wouldn't have had anywhere near the impact it had without you getting involved. Take me back to that night, Ken.
Yeah, actually, it was pretty confusing going into that match for me personally because I hadn't had the experience to be in there with those two guys at that level. I mean, these are icons, guys that are just, as we know now, just greatness. And I was just coming in. Yeah. And so here I was kind of pushed into that spot. And I was very happy for sure. But you also have doubts in your mind, like, how am I going to do this? Like, can I keep up with them? There's a lot of thoughts because referee is a very, very important part of matches. And you see Hebner and many, many others that are so important on how matches can go with the way that things are done. And so me being in that position, I really thought to myself, man, I just don't know whether or not I'm able to do the things I needed to do coming from the MMA world, the fighting world, into this wrestling world now. And was I going to be able to do these guys right? And so my whole time going into it, like I said, I have my doubts, but I think about 10 minutes into that match, or probably even shorter, I would say probably after they started locking up and made the first contact, it felt like I didn't have to do anything other than just be me, which would be an MMA fighter, or calling an MMA match or a no holds barred match. So it felt natural, thank God, but it felt so natural with what they were doing in there and the reality of what they were doing in there. It just felt like I was right at home with what I was doing prior to getting into pro wrestling. So I thought that both those guys did a great job at understanding the moment, who I was, where I came from, and what kind of match they put on. And that's just the greatness of guys like, Stone Cold and Bret Hart. It's not just their ability to be able to do matches, put together different types of matches, but understand the culture and the climate in which you're going into, depending on where you're at. Those guys are really great at understanding what would work. Yeah. And as you've seen in that match, they put on a tremendous, in fact, it's the greatest of all time. Yeah. And I just so happened to be a part of it. So, yeah, it was, again, like I said, I had my doubts going into it. But after I was in it for a split second, I felt right at home.
But instantly, that moment when you kind of grab Bret into a takedown, and you see the kind of reticence on his face. Like, without you being in that moment, we wouldn't have got the full heel turn, because that moment was so pivotal to this kind of transition to him becoming this kind of coward that was backing off from the face of the MMA fighter. It was really important. I know that. You and Bret were close, weren't you? You'd trained with him in Calgary. You'd worked with him beforehand. So I guess that was, really important that you were part of that match.
Yeah. And I credit a lot of my understanding of the character in which I was supposed to be. I credit a lot of that to Bret, helping me understand that I'm not a pro wrestler, and they brought me in as this world's most dangerous man. And to go out there and do hip tosses and leapfrogs and, these things, that's just not me. That's not who they brought me in for. They brought me in for what I was famous for, and that was submitting guys. Yeah. And so after I understood that and was able to implement those different types of holds into it, I was able to actually start feeling comfortable. But like I said, with the friendship I had with Bret and all the other guys that really bond together, to help me whenever I got into a match with somebody, I would always ask them, what do you think we should do? You know, I know I got to keep to my thing. And I know that some of the stuff is so unfamiliar with a lot of them that a lot of times I just did it. Like I took them down or I did whatever I did and I just got in the hold. And then they would do what they naturally would do to fight to get out of it. And that's kind of how the matches went. And, you know, I was very fortunate, like I said, to develop friendships, not only with Bret, but with Stone Cold and The Rock. And I mean, I can name Shawn Michaels, all of them that I was able to go in the ring with. I was able to develop, you know, friendship through being able to work on matches and understanding of the psychology of it and understanding of how things were able to go. When you do those kinds of things with people, you start developing relationships and friendships with them. And I was fortunate to do that.
Did you feel any kind of pushback from the locker room when you first entered? Obviously, you are somewhat of an outsider coming into the WWF at the time, or was it? Did you feel accepted from day one?
No, I think rightfully so. There was pushback, not necessarily on whether I was there or not there, but pushback a little bit on whether or not they felt safe. Because wrestling is really trust. Yeah. And depending on people to be where they're supposed to be in certain critical situations. Because if they're not, people get hurt. And so I think a lot of that in the beginning, because of who I was, you know, I was a big, strong guy, and I was this badass guy. And I'm coming into this world of wrestling where there's a lot of trust supposed to be built amongst one another and being in the right places at the right time. And so, you know, with me having the ability that I have naturally to go in there and put a lot of trust in me and be able to understand I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be, because I could severely hurt someone. And it wouldn't be because, you know, I just, you know, did it to do that, but it's because their guard's down. It's because that they're vulnerable. And you're responsible for taking care of each of those individuals that you step in that inside those ropes with. You're responsible for them. Yeah. Just as they are for you. And so there was a lot of that at first, of like not truly being comfortable with going in there with me, not knowing whether or not I was going to be doing the things I needed to do to protect myself and them.
Yeah, I get that, and that's a reasonable response to stepping in with the world's most dangerous man, I think.